Hi, I'm Steve, and this is Speak in Character. Today, we're going to tackle a question that I'm seeing pop up in a lot of different online forums around Daggerheart. And the question being with how does the game master properly handle a party where two things are happening? One, we're not using initiative, so how do we police the party's actions? A party member taking too many, quote unquote, too many turns in a row, or someone getting left out? How do we handle that? And what do the rules say about that? And what do I do? But even over that, another question that's kind of working its way in with that first question is, can I, as the GM, what do I do when the party just keeps rolling with hope? Or one character keeps rolling with hope, do they just keep going? So let's break that down a little bit and talk about what's more or less written in the core rule book for Daggerheart versus and it's a yes and the versus part, how you at your table and you with your party of players. And if you're not a GM and you're a player watching this, this absolutely applies to you as well. How you, the player, works with your fellow party members and your GM. So it's a two-way street, right? In Daggerheart, we are telling a narrative story together. And I think that's important because in the past, like when we look at Dungeons and Dragons, now I've been running games and that started with Dungeons and Dragons going back 40 years. Yeah, shh, don't tell anybody. It's true though, it's true. 40 years. Well, I can tell you that back in the beginning of Dungeons and Dragons, there was, and maybe it's still like this today, we definitely were, as the dungeon master, we were looking to be the power in the room, the voice of all NPCs to bring that action down upon the party. Dare I even say at times, we shall wipe the entire party unless they stand their ground and defeat us. That's not really necessarily at all the case when we look at Daggerheart, and maybe that's not even the case when we think about how we play Dungeons and Dragons today. It's really at the end of it all, it's what you, the GM, with your players, the party, want out of your gaming experience. If you guys together want a game master whose job is to bring everything they can at you within the rules and see if they can beat the party, you can set that up. You can absolutely play that. I don't believe that creates for the best gameplay around a rising hero story. You're the players, you are the heroes in this tale. Otherwise, we'd be role playing. I've got to go to the bar today and I've got to polish all the cups and make some mead and put some bread out and wait for people to arrive. And I'm at work. That would be a sim, I suppose. Instead, what we're doing here is creating a hero story, the hero's journey, and each of you as players are those heroes. As the GM, our job is to work with the story to bring the surprise elements, to bring the combat features, to bring to life the NPCs and create a world in which hopefully you, the players, want to be in. And then you're shaping that world. So, with all of that narrative out of the way, just kind of wanted to touch on these ideas. What kind of story are you telling? What kind of game are you playing, right? What is the game? So, Daggerheart. There's no initiative. We know this. It's not a problem. Our brains have gotten used to all of the different tabletop games where we are rolling an initiative. We're getting an order. We get these two to three to four to five different things that each of us can do. Sort of like if you're playing Magic the Gathering, you've got these steps that you're going to take in this order. D&D has a little bit of that flavor, right? Where you've got initiative. These are the things you can do within your initiative move during combat specifically. That's great, no problem. But we're going to set that aside and we're going to look at Daggerheart. So we had to let the brain say, yep, I know this. No worries, set that over here because we're playing Daggerheart. Here in Daggerheart, It's a narrative, it's a story. You're stepping in, say, to a combat scene where there's no initiative. The GM sets the scene. So here's what's going on. Here's what you see, what you experience. Might even ask the players, given this base setup, what do you notice from your point of view as you look upon the scene that's now been described? And then let them step in with what they're noticing about that scene. But even beyond that, taking the first action. Now, if I'm going to spend a fear as the GM and I move my fear marker, I can initiate the combat from a fear point. However, it can go the other way, where the combat initiates where the players say, okay, we have a threat here. The GM's explained what's in front of us and around us. And there's a natural organic pull for one of your players, sometimes two, to say, oh, I'm doing this. Can I do this? I want to step into this. I'm wondering about this. So right there, your natural organic initiative it's already started. When I run a game with my group, so like with Stormspire, we during the beta of the Daggerheart open beta, we also were playtesting Stormspire, which is the first campaign's published now. And throughout that process, it was all beta, right? Daggerheart was beta. This was a year ago. And we were trying to figure out, okay, do we give the party initiative? Did the party want to have an initiative order? We tried that. It wasn't as organic for my group, for them. It wasn't my call. It was their call. But what was more organic was to step in. And what I noticed is player one would go, player three would go, player two would go, player four would go. I might interrupt. If they rolled with fear, I would take my go when the fear piece, or they had a failure, or they rolled with fear. I could choose to go, right, by the rules. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. And what I noticed is after we had an entire quote unquote round of action like this, they tended most of the time to stick to that order in their combat because it was natural in the movement of what was already happening. They each were choosing where they were moving, what they were attacking, or what spell they were prepping, or what domain ability they were using, sometimes together in tandem, sometimes separate with different adversaries in the one battlefield. It really depended. But I noticed there was a fairly consistent self-disciplined rotation of action. Now and then somebody went before another person, like they changed the order, in other words. And as long as the group, not me as a GM, but the group of players were like, yeah, 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 that makes sense. That works fine. We actually never ever had a problem. If somebody felt like they were going, they were going to go again, and they were going to go again, and if I was especially noticing maybe like some discomfort in the room, the other players were like, well, maybe I need to step in too. I kind of feel like it's my turn. It's okay as the GM to very gently pause the action and say, now, is that what you're intending? And is that what the group's intending? Or did you want to kind of put a pin in this? You did these three pieces. You want to put a pin in that for the moment. And does it pass to someone else? Or is the group good to do these four actions in a row from this character? I didn't rule on the outcome. The only time I would do that is if it was contradictory to the story at large, meaning they're breaking the world frame in a way that, as the GM, we need to hold that, which almost never happened. But I had to put that little caveat out there. Somebody said, I'm suddenly Superman and I'm flying off and breaking through the sky. Obviously, as a GM, you want to come in and say, well, here's the container. So, that aside, the party will work together if you open the floor in this way. And it's as simple as saying that. So when I'm seeing online forums and people having discussions, and I think that's great, by the way, and keep doing that, whether it's, on Facebook or YouTube or it's on Reddit, wherever it might be, keep asking your questions. You're wondering, you're thinking about. But know that as the GM, your job is as simple as handing that question to your party, to your players. And you players, watching this right now. It's the same for you. It's okay for you to say, hey, here in the narrative, I'm wondering about how we might step into this combat together. Your downtime mechanics, right? There is a mechanic that isn't always used necessarily. In my group with my players, it got used, but not as often as the other options. And that is to prepare with another player, right? One of your downtime actions. You also can have role play. If you're not doing that already, you can totally have role play during your downtime actions where characters might be talking about, we know we have this upcoming piece we're walking into. We know we're headed into the dark castle and that we're looking for the dark wizard, and that when we get there, we're probably going to have some sort of combat. Do you guys want to prepare together and talk about what that might look like in character, as well as maybe a little bit of the mechanics of, how you might think about setting it up before you get there? Of course, when you get there, it's going to be probably not what you ever imagined, right? Just like in regular real life. You think you know what it's going to be, you get there and you have the real experience. Even doing that, you're going to have an organic, in the moment reaction and response to what's in front of you, which is what makes role play so deep and meaningful, especially in a story. Preparing for a combat like this is just another piece of that narrative, bringing characters together, which I think is great. Now, I will say this before I talk about the hope and fear part of the question. In the next combat that happened, so we talked about that first combat, let's say another combat came along, the next gameplay or an hour later, whenever it might be, that order that we were talking about that organically happened, player one, player four, then player two, player three, may be totally different. In this next combat, it may be player four that felt this pull to act first. It's okay. Then player one, then player two, then player three, however it might go. What I'm trying to say there is in D&D, we think about each combat, we all roll initiative, including the dungeon master for the NPCs and or adversaries in this combat. Here in Daggerheart, every single combat or interaction that requires some form of give and take with order, you can step into. As the GM, I could initiate that by simply spending fear and having one of my NPC adversaries just start doing what they're going to do. And then it'll be the player's turn to run away or respond or freeze or whatever they choose to do. And we let the organic gameplay unfold. So our job as GMs, it doesn't mean that we have to be the police. You will do it this way. This is how it will go, and you will like it. You take that pressure off of yourselves. And as the players, I hope that you're not stepping into a game where you're playing Daggerheart and everything is being micromanaged for you. The idea here is to breathe, find your voice, speak in character, be your character as much as you can be. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the other part of the question I'm seeing online. If a character keeps spending hope, do they just keep getting to go? The Daggerheart Core Rules technically do not say that if a character keeps gaining hope, meaning they roll their hope and their fear dice and they're rolling with hope. That's how I'm interpreting the question that I'm seeing all over the place. You roll with hope. When that happens, you gain a hope. Now, you can only ever hold a total of 6 hope. So if you have 6 hope and you rolled with hope, that's great. There's nothing to mark down. You're already full, which is why you guys want to be spending your hope and using those great abilities with it. But if you keep rolling, so you roll with hope, you do an action, you say, hey, I'm going to do this other thing. Party's cool with that. You roll hope again, so success with a hope. You still gain a hope if you have room to gain it, but it's not you rolling hope that just keeps the action going for you, the player. Now, you didn't fail, so it's not automatically reverting to the GM. Your party continues to take turns until someone rolls with fear or there is a failed roll. You can fail with hope. It's still a failed roll. By the rules, it comes back to the GM. Now, it doesn't mean the GM's going to take it. The GM could pass on it. Could say, it's good. I'm taking my fear, slide that fear token over. But I'm not using that fear. My side is right where they're at. It's back to you, the party. Okay? You can totally do that as the GM. That's your side. If the party is not generating fear, nor are they generating failure, and things are amping up, the GM can spend one or more fear to step in. Now, normally the GM wants to do that when there is a narrative moment that would call for it, that would heighten things, would bring more of a heroic moment to the story, help an imbalance be a little more balanced. And I'm not saying interrupt the critical success of the party to say, oh, no, 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 party. I'm the GM and I'm going to spend my fear and bring you down now. Not at all what I'm saying. That's counterintuitive to the hero's story. If you're playing the Dark Sorcerer and that Dark Sorcerer, that NPC, has an ability to spend those hope and interrupt that action and do that great thing, that's part of your narrative. But to do it to say, I'm going to show this party, now that's a different piece, right? And again, that's where we started today's conversation around Dungeons and Dragons of old, back in the day, if you will, in the late 70s, early 80s. There was a trend at one point where it was all the DM against the party. That's not the flavor for Daggerheart, especially I say that from the core rules. It's a narrative, co-creative, cooperative story. And that also doesn't mean, well, there's no rules. People just do whatever they feel like. It doesn't mean that either. There are rules. That's what we're talking about. But it's more of a flow. It's the same idea of being where you're at. So I tie all of that back to the idea of take a breath, know that it's anxiety, it's worry. You're like, I'm not going to do a good enough job as a GM. I'm not going to do a good enough job as a player. Yes, you are. Of course you are. Because you come from you right where you're at. Literally, take a breath and talk to your party. Party, take a breath, talk to your GM, talk to your fellow players. What's the game you're here to play? Once you've established your base ideology of play, what's going to roll, how you're going to roll, how you're going to assume an order or not assume an order, you can kind of follow from there. And if something needs to change, don't be so rigid that you can't roll with it, flow with it. Okay? That would be my number one piece of advice as you're stepping into Daggerheart. There is more of a liquidity of movement, a flow of organic and narrative storytelling, and just kind of let go a little bit. And I think you will be pleasantly surprised at what you and your party create and step into in these combat scenarios. So I hope this has been helpful. Drop a comment down below. Let me know how you and your party here in Daggerheart work together as a GM or as the player. What's working in your way? Some folks are indeed saying we're going to use initiative. There is nothing wrong with that. I'd love to hear how you're doing it and what really works for you. If you like the channel, thank you so much. Give us a like, give us a follow. It costs nothing to do that. It really helps the algorithm. This is a new channel. I'm just getting going with it. Welcome in, and definitely check out our Patreon and Stormspire. Daggerheart Frame and Campaign 1 is out right now. It's doing phenomenally well. We're thrilled. Campaign 2 is on its way by the end of August, beginning of September. So check out Stormspire, AmericanCarver.com. You can find everything right there. And you guys have an awesome next game. Thanks for being here.